Hi everyone, my name is Joseph. Welcome to Digimon Liberator 4-1 or 4-1. We're going to be introduced to a new character. Her name is, I believe it's pronounced Suzane. I have it on my notes right here. Suzune or Suzane. I'm going to call her Suzune. Suzune Kazuki. And her Digimon is Frigimon. If anyone's ever seen Adventure 1, then you're probably familiar with Frigimon. As well with Savers as well. More specifically with Ikaro. I forgot his name, but the one with Falcomon. Anywho, so I found this chapter to be very interesting. I'm not gonna lie, between the previous introduction of Ryu, I still believe that Ryu is probably my favorite introduction for a new character. I just really appreciate his characterization, and as a user here pointed out, there's actually a lot of really cool references to the Digimon franchise through Ryu's character. Like, for example, his age is actually a reference to the actual franchise's age, which is pretty cool. So thank you to that individual who pointed that out. Very much appreciate your engagement and the cool little tidbits of information and reminders that you always do have a tendency to share with myself and everyone else as well. So we have a new, my cat's tail. We have a new member of the Debug team. Her name is Suzune. And so far, I was enjoying her introduction, but I'm not gonna lie, a little bit of me is a bit biased, especially when I really don't feel like there's a need to highlight that she's a wealthy individual. So that caught me off guard a little bit, but I did appreciate how it was explained that essentially she's not the wealthy one, she's wealthy through her husband. But with that being said, I am curious just about why the writers would want to introduce a minor class element like that. It makes me curious about if maybe they'll be making some kind of commentary on class. I know they won't be. Digimon's not that kind of property. But as an individual who enjoys engaging with narratives and stories, I think that'd be really cool if Digimon did something like that to divulge into minor issues of class. But again, I don't think we'll be doing that. But the only reason why I was just a little bit not a fan of that is just because I've always been a bigger fan of when the protagonists are coming from means that are more neutral or from a low-income perspective, because that usually implies that the character will be a bit more rambunctious in a positive way. Like E.G., for example, I would say is a really good example about this. He was a character who I would say, from Seekers, who I would say is definitely the opposite of Suzune, just for the fact that he was living a little bit poorly, all because of he lost his parents and everything like that, right? So I don't think we'll be divulging. We being the community of Liberator and the writers of Liberator, I don't think we'll be divulging into class issues. But again, it'll be interesting to see why they brought up that detail. I'm hoping we'll come back to it, but maybe we won't. It might just be a minor element that gets brushed aside. I do like Frigimon's, just his characterization. I think he's very cute. The way that he interacts and engages with Suzune. And I also really appreciate just the fact that apparently they were trying to make him unique compared to other Frigimon. Correct me if I'm wrong. Frigimon are typically big, but the way that they're describing this Frigimon, he seems to be bigger than other Frigimon. He seems to be unique in that aspect. I actually do kind of like that just because since I am one who's been consuming multiple Digimon iterations, I am still currently watching Ghost Game. I haven't finished it. I'll be frank with everyone. I was watching Ghost Game while my dog was still alive. So I do have some Gamamon really much to remind me of my dog. And anyway, so these are personal reasons. That's why I haven't continued Ghost Game. But I do want to continue, and I will be finishing it eventually. But I have watched every other iteration except essentially for Cross Wars and Appmon. And I only bring that up because now when I think of Frigimon, I do think of the one from Adventure. And I also think of the one from Savers. And I feel like both of those characters, the show does a good job. The writers of both iterations, of both seasons, Savers and Adventure 1, do a good job of making that Frigimon become individuals. Well, the second Frigimon serves as a mother character. He's not even male. She's a female character, and she serves as excuse me, I know I'm mispronouncing his name, but Ikataro. Can't recall his name, but the little young gentleman with Falcomon, he was his stepmother. So I'm glad that they're making this Frigimon to be for right now. I'm just going to use the he pronoun just because of the way that he's engaging with Suzane. I feel like he is a he, but I'm appreciating the characterization that the writers are doing for Frigimon. I also like he has a tendency to kind of poke fun at her a little bit, tease her a little bit. Oh, he points out to her, oh, you like the attention that you get from the fact that you're walking with such a big Frigimon, but also the fact that the way that she carries herself as well. Essentially, that's how the interaction of this chapter begins, with the interaction between Suzune and Frigimon. What I found interesting about this chapter, though, in terms of narration, is that it seems that the plot is thickening. And what I mean by that, towards the end of the story, maybe the mid of it, we get introduced to two other characters. Reina, I believe her name is. Again, I have it written down. Reina and Devimon. And these individuals are actually doing the same objective, That's Suzune. Suzanne, excuse me, that's Suzanne. Excuse, I keep going between those names. I'm gonna call her Suzune. I don't know why I keep saying Suzanne. I'm not gonna lie. I used to know someone with that kind of name, so I think that's why I keep defaulting that. Suzune. So I'm gonna stick with Suzune. So again, Suzune. What is Suzune's objective? Well, essentially, I think this is a connection to the NPC that Shoto fought in chapter 1 of the comic portion of Liberator. But I believe, as a quick reminder, as it's revealed 2 chapters ago in the comic portion, not the novel portion, that these Digimon who are in cards, they're actually inside cards to protect them from Lacunia. That's actually Lacuna. Because if these Digimon are out, these raw Digimon are out in the wild for too long, that essentially the world erases them, it seems like, or it's just negative consequences occurs to these Digimon who are roaming around freely. So because of that, that's why the Digimon are placed into cards for their own protection. Also, it gets revealed that Digimon have a tendency, so the reason why there's rogue NPCs is because these roaming Digimon, they're infecting these NPCs in order to protect themselves. The Digimon, again, the more they're exposed to Lacuna in the public, the more likely it is that their data will become corrupted. And so apparently once a corrupted NPC becomes corrupted, they essentially lose their sense of self. And so the rogue NPC that Shoto had fought, that Digimon that was invading it, not invading, what's the word? Invading, that's a fine word. What's the word when a ghost goes inside? Possession. I can't believe I forgot about that word. So the Digimon that was possessing the rogue NPC, this Digimon is now out and about. And so Suzune is trying to catch this Digimon before he's able to hurt himself. As it turns out, Reina and Devimon's doing the same action as well. Pardon me, everyone. I'm not going to lie. I'm doing these videos not on Sunday mornings anymore. I'm doing it after work. So I forgot that I do have quotes I want to look at. So that's why I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So the first quote that I do have that I want to share is I meant to ask you before. This is with Frigimon, an interaction between him and Suzune at the beginning of the story of this chapter. Do you act this spoiled with everyone? No way. If I let others see this side of me, they'll look down on me, wouldn't they? I'm only like this in front of you, my husband. I'm only like this in front of my husband and you, Frigimon. Oh, and my mom back home, replied Suzune. Well, don't you have it good? In fact, Suzune felt so comfortable and relaxed around her Digimon partner that it was almost like being back at her family home. Part of that was down to Frigimon's personality, but really, something about Frigimon's huge size made Suzune want to act childish and helpless. How many times she thought about ordering a giant cushion shaped like Frigimon since she started this job? So I just think this quote, this passage is very adorable. I like how Frigimon is again poking fun at Suzune. But Suzune is obviously self-aware. She admits that no, she's not going to act a certain way with other people or certain situations because she's aware of how that's going to make her be perceived by other individuals. And I think that's a very good thing to keep in mind, especially because she is 25. I do wish she was older. She was married quite young. I think it would have been better personally if she was closer to 30, maybe even 30 itself, but maybe more like 28 around there. But anyways, that's a smart criticism. But it gets revealed that she is 25 and yeah, so I think it's very cool how essentially the story is establishing that she has a very close relationship with Frigimon. She only reveals her true self with her mother, her husband, and Frigimon. I think that's really important that these individuals are being pointed out because the mom is obviously family. The husband is obviously a romantic partner. And so for Frigimon to be included in this group, that just really shows how much Suzune both respects and trusts Frigimon. And I think that's quite awesome. She doesn't indicate that partly why she feels this way as well is because of his huge size. So it might make her feel a bit childish, make her feel like she has a protector that's there to protect, that's there to guide and assist her. But I'm glad that she's not fully embracing that childish side, right? She could have easily have been more like Minmay from Adventure 1, but I would argue she's acting more a bit like, I think I said this already about another female character within the story too. I think it was Ariza. But I feel like Suzune's a combination of both, more so Sora with a little bit of Minmay, that girly aspect that I like the attention, that's the Minmay portion, but the carrying oneself professionally, being aware of the surroundings, being aware of how they're perceived, that's the Sora portion. But yeah, so continuing forward, the second quote I have is, her husband's salary was nothing to sneeze at. You could safely say they were wealthy, but Suzune had decided she wanted to contribute some income of her own She wanted to work while still able so that no matter what happened, they would always be okay. The job had its stressful moments for sure, but having the ever understanding Frigimon as a partner helped to no end. So I do like this detail. This is one of the details that made me start warming up towards Suzune after it was revealed that she's wealthy through her husband's side. I think it's cool that she's wanting to be independent. Even though she is married, she doesn't want to give up herself completely, herself as in her psyche as an individual. Because that's one element about being in a relationship, is that sometimes, how does one know that in an unhealthy relationship, when one loses themselves, when one is no longer an individual? And so the fact that Suzune is able to recognize that she's comfortable and she could not do anything with the life she doesn't want to, but she makes a choice that she wants to work because she wants to utilize her agency. Again, I think that says so much about her as a character, so that's why I really did start warming up to Suzune. And that's that aspect that really reminds me of Sora, the way that Sora, she may not have appreciated what her mom was trying to pass on to her at first with the family flower business, but Sora was still able to explore herself through her sports. And at the end, she decided to explore herself through the family element. I'm talking about the sub, by the way, not the dub. I know the dub is a bit more forceful, and the mom was a lot less supportive as well. But in the sub, there's different context. So just an FYI about that. So that's why I really did like this quote and why I wanted to share it with you guys. The third quote that I have is, I meant to ask you before. Do you act this? Oh, didn't I? Oh, for some reason that's a repeat. Excuse me, everyone. Huh, strange. I never had that happen before. Anywho, sorry about that. Wild Digimon invade the bodies of NPCs because of their survival instincts. They use the body of the NPC as a kind of protective suit, but at the cost of losing their sense of self, causing them to go berserk. Once they've lost that protection, their instinct is to search for a new place to hide. After infiltrating a host, the Digimon becomes aware that possessing an NPC will cause it to go berserk and gain a small amount of environmental resistance. So when they regain their sense of self, when they gain their sense of self with this new knowledge, the Digimon doesn't make the same mistake twice, explains Suzune. We confirm that such a Digimon with increased environmental resistance also has an enhanced hacking ability. It seems they then hide inside objects in the game world instead. You mean like grass, trees, and whatnot? Asked Frigimon. Right, said Suzune. So this explanation is what I was talking about before I started reading from the quotes themselves. So it gets revealed this new tidbit of information that when rogue Digimon, wild Digimon, they essentially are able to grow themselves. They grow by experience. Once they've infected a rogue NPC, they're now able to hack stationary objects, as Frigimon points out, leaves, shrubbery, and etc. Right? I did find it to be a very interesting tip, but again, I find this digital world of Digimon to be interesting just because it seems to be quite harmful towards Digimon, and I wonder why it would be like that. I'm hoping that we'll explore this some more as we continue moving on, and I guess we'll go ahead and see. One aspect I did wish we did explore more of from Seekers is, and correct me if I'm wrong, one has read Seekers, but I felt like it was implied that the Wasp Slum was basically just the exterior, like the shell of the digital world, but the actual digital world was properly through the portal, through the gate that was present in that iteration of Digimon. But I always felt like we never really got able to go into the real digital world, and so I'm curious if maybe this isn't the real quote-unquote digital world. Maybe this is just some kind of like a shadow version of it, and the Digimon are accidentally going into this shadow version by accident. But who knows? Well, hopefully it gets explained as we continue with the story. Moving forward, the girl called Reina and the Devimon rattled on without a pause. The clamor they were making caused Suzune's temples to hurt a little bit. Still, she had spent enough time with Yuki and the others to be used to this much. It was Archie's mild discomfort this time, not a splitting headache. Excuse me, said Suzune. I'm sorry, but maybe you could explain to me what you mean by quest. She tried her best to remain calm. She was less concerned by the pair's boisterous mood and more concerned with that disconcerting word that they used. What was the word? Oh, I should have saved it. The word was, I think it was wild and catch or something like that. First, Suzune had to get some information out of them. So I just like this passage because it shows that there seems to be something deeper going on. When the novel and the comic was first announced, I was aware about the comic first, and then the novel I was made aware way later. I didn't know there was going to be a novel portion, but after I discovered this fact, I also did become aware of the fact that supposedly these two properties are going to cross with each other at points, and we see that this occurs a couple times, like the line about how there's a new debugger being trained. I'm pretty sure that's a reference to Shoto and Ariza, and the line right here about the individual who fought a rogue NPC, or maybe it could have been also Ryu as well. Well, no, Ryu fought. He didn't fight a rogue Digimon. Excuse me. So those little elements I've been appreciating so far, but I think it would be really cool if the main crux of the climax of the narration, if they kind of split it between both the webcomic and the novel. If essentially, if you just read one, you won't have the full story. I know that might be a bit isolating for individuals, because I know some people don't want to read the novel and some people don't want to read the comic and vice versa. But I think it'll be really cool to help encourage engagement between the two, and also just to create a more fleshed out story. But we'll see. I don't think they being the writers, I don't think the writers would do that. But I personally wouldn't really mind that, just because I feel like this detail it's quite a big detail in my opinion. Just because we know that not only do we discover again about rogue NPCs and their hacking capabilities being able to progress and be refined, but now we're discovering that these rogue NPCs and wild Digimon, someone else knows about them. That must be the antagonist, right? So far, we don't have the antagonist. So these little seeds of mysteriousness, I'm actually really enjoying, and I'm looking forward to how it connects to the Digimon comic. And I also like how, of course, they mentioned Yuki, because Yuki obviously is much more outgoing, and that's something that Impmon really doesn't like, but it's just part of her personality. And even though she's not present, I feel like this is the second or even third time where the novel has done a pretty good job of referencing other characters, and it just makes it feel bigger than it needs to be in a good way. Because it could feel much more smaller and isolated just with these individual characters. Kind of like with Seekers, I feel like it was kind of small, the world, despite working with these groups, the Digipolice and the Hackers and the Sons of Tartarus. We only really worked with specific individuals and always the same people as well. But anyway, so continuing with the next quote. As mentioned earlier, the presence of wild Digimon within Digimon Liberator was not public knowledge. Most of the players who had encountered them had dismissed them as graphical bugs, and that was the end of it. And securing wild Digimon, or put another way, capturing them, was a task for the Debug team, and the details were kept strictly confidential. But Reina used those exact words that she was there to capture, so that's the first word, a wild Pokemon. So capture and wild, two very specific words that was part of the objective for Suzune and Frigimon. Yet we're seeing there's a third party who has the same objective. Why? Who could he have gotten this mission from? Really quickly, Reina gets introduced when Pokemon is captured by Reina. Excuse me, not by Reina, by Suzune and Frigimon. And after the card is captured, Pokemon is captured or safely secured within the card. That's where Reina and Devimon appear, and they start having their conversation. So then here's the last quote that I have. Suzune had been thinking of the mission as just another typical Debug team job, but now a keen but clueless player had entered the picture, seemingly being manipulated from the shadows. It had come completely out of nowhere, but she now realized the gravity of the situation for the admin team. Let's do it, Suzune, said Frigimon. Yup, time to root this corruption out of its source. Time to root out this corruption out at the source. And with that, Suzune took out her D-storage and pointed it directly at Reina. Let's battle, Reina, said Suzune. If you win... Let me start that over. Excuse me, I feel like I said that quite quickly. Let's battle, Reina, said Suzune. If you win, I'll give you this card for free. This time it was Suzune who spoke without a pause, not leaving Reina and Devimon a chance to interrupt. But if I win, I'll have you join me for tea. And that's how this chapter ends, 4-1. So I kind of had like a little bit of a mini roller coaster of experiences, of emotions. At first, I didn't like Suzune. Then it gets revealed she's not wealthy through her personal side, her family side, but through her husband's side. I was like, okay. Then more of her characterization started coming through, like she wants to use her agency, and I started warming up to her. And I really like how the way she's able to differentiate between her more playful side and more serious side. And again, she really does remind me of Sora, especially that last passage that I just read. Excuse me, everyone, that's my cat. She knocked over my chapstick. I had it standing upright. Anywho, but yeah, so I just was going through a small roller coaster because although, again, it started a little bit negative, then I started liking Suzune. At the end of this passage, not that I didn't start disliking Suzune again, but rather she confused me. She threw me for a loop. the whole I'm gonna battle you. If you win, you take my card. But if I win, I'll have you join me for tea. I'm really curious about is Reina going to be a character who's going to be recurring? And in fact, actually, I should probably look at the characters. If Reina is present within the characters, there's a good chance that she might be a recurring character. Okay, no, she's not. So I just find it very... Oh, but hold on. Give me a quick second. I also do not... Oh, this is just for the comic. Well, what about for the novel side? Well, unfortunately... Well, let me look at the picture. I don't see any Devimon in the the title picture for the novel. So yeah, I don't believe she's going to be a recurring character just for maybe Suzune's story. So Suzune having this ultimatum where if I win, I keep the card, but if you win, actually if you win, you get the card, but if I win, you go out for tea with me. I wonder if that's just Suzune's playful side coming out, and I'm just kind of digging too much into that last line, that line of let me go back to it. That line of, if I win, I'll have you join me for tea. That could just be characterization for Suzune's character. So I'm not gonna lie, that last line, it caught me off guard in a fun kind of way. Again, I kind of started off negative with my explanation. Not that I started disliking Suzune, but her statement just really was left field for me, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with that detail. And again, it might just be simple characterization for Suzune's character, but now that I'd stop and think about it, I actually kind of like that. I really appreciate it. I think that's very fun. So I am looking forward to 4-2. In case I never explained this, I always do my best to not read ahead. I know they're all already out, but I like to read it a week just so I know if I read it all at once, then I'm going to be anticipating for the next release. So I've yet to read 4-2, but I am looking forward to engaging with it. So far from all the characters that have been introduced from the Debug team, I'd say I think my favorite is Ryu. And after that, it probably is Suzune. For right now, Suzune. After that, Yuki. And then probably Rinwar will be last. But despite Rinwar being last, it doesn't mean I dislike him. He's just my least favorite, but I'm still very much enjoying what we got of him so far. So yes, thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I really do appreciate it. My question for everyone is, what's your opinion of Suzune? So far from the Debug team, we have a lot of characters now, and are you like me? Are you able to set up a hierarchy? If so, if you want to share that with me, I'd love to hear your opinions of the characters. If not, then I'd just love to hear your general opinion about the characters. How do you feel about the Digimon Liberator characters compared to other iterations of Digimon? Not just Seekers, but also V-Tamer, the anime, Ghost Game, Adventure 1, Adventure 2, and so forth. Again, for me, I really don't mind placing these written formats and these comic formats along with the main adaptations just because, well, it's Digimon, and we're able to consume this Digimon story that's utilizing themes that Digimon usually utilizes and explores. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate it. Everyone, have a great day. Have a prodigious day, and take care.